We're here with J.R. Rivers, CTO of Cumulus Networks. So J.R., tell me what Cumulus does in a couple of sentences.
So Cumulus Networks is focused on helping people who have the dubious honor of building their own physical infrastructure. We help them build the networks that make that infrastructure run efficiently, effectively, and serve their business needs.
What makes Cumulus unique in this space?
If you look at networking in the old days, it was served up by a set of incumbent suppliers, and many people know who they are. And they were very focused on the network equipment itself, the physical gear that lives in the network. We looked at it very differently. In a modern data center, in the WebScale data center, networking is pervasive across all of the elements, server, storage, and the network switches and routers themselves. And providing network solutions that fit across that whole landscape and fit in with the modern data center is super important. So we choose Linux as the lingua franca, the substrate of the modern data center. We focused all of our development work, all of our open source contributions, and all of our operational tooling around making Linux networking pervasive and meeting the needs that people have in their businesses.
So I see on your website you talk about WebScale networking. So what is WebScale networking?
When you look at the WebScale companies, they, for the most part, especially the big ones in North America, they came to the conclusion that being able to tie in their networking equipment, again, switches and routers, with their operational tool chain they use for the rest of the data center is super important. It really cuts down on, the number of people that they need to configure, manage, and run the data center, but more importantly, it gives them visibility across the applications from events that might occur in the network, how they affect a storage array, or how they affect a compute node, or even up to an application layer. In addition, these people have realized that capacity in the end is king. When you look at building out a modern data center, you have a ton of different jobs running against each other and services, and you can try and highly engineer your network, but that usually doesn't work out really well. What tends to work, we found as humans, is just apply a lot of capacity to the problem and let things kind of work themselves out in a very chaotic manner. What's required to allow that capacity to occur is to decouple functionality from things like speed increases. How do you buy your network hardware from people that give you high performance network hardware at phenomenally good prices, really close to the manufacturers, as opposed to buying them from people that add a ton of value into that hardware and extract a lot of margin.
So virtualization is really established today, but the modern trend is toward containers and microservices that are far more dynamic and ephemeral than traditional virtual machines. So how do you network containers and microservices?
Yeah, that's a great question. A couple points about containers and microservices, and I'll grossly lump the two together because it's the same underlying technology. They're, again, built on that Linux substrate. So for every container deployment, there's a ton of networking that occurs, not in some network switch or router, but networking that occurs on the host. And so being able to connect those hosts to the network in an efficient way, even connecting containers to the network in an efficient way, and providing visibility and control around all of that, super important to the modern data center. Our products, we have a piece of technology or a product called HostPack that our customers that use, are doing containers deployments use. They connect their hosts at layer 3, so they get a highly available IP routed substrate. And then they also many times advertise their containers at layer 3 and get visibility and high degree of connectivity and mobility that way. In addition, those microservices have a lot of chattery communication with each other, and where they get placed is, as you pointed out, again, very chaotic. So having a ton of capacity that allows that kind of communication chaos to occur helps these customers roll out their applications really, really quickly without having to do a bunch of engineering around it.
I also see on your website that you talk about unlocking the vertical stack. So what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so if you roll back, say, 15 years, which is and even more recent for a lot of customers, you would look at networking as a piece of equipment you got from one of the well-known networking companies. And that was effectively the extent of your network. The hosts were not that involved in the network. The routers oftentimes might be thought of as a periphery of a data center cluster network. And the switches were wholly enough unto themselves. And all the technology inside of those switches was constructed, picked out, put together. All the operational frameworks were developed by those suppliers with very little layering in there or choice. In the modern data center, unlocking that vertical stack really is taking each of those layers, the hardware layer, allowing that to be acquired, manufactured and designed independently from the software layers, having operating systems, networking models, routing protocol suites, and operational tool chains that all exist at their own separate layers and can, when appropriate, exist on a switch, in a router, or on a server.
One last question. What is your vision for the future of the company?
When I founded Cumulus Networks with my co-founder Nolan Leak, we had one fundamental vision, and that was to be the networking company for the modern data center and to allow customers to build applications that we couldn't even imagine today. And so far, we're actually watching a lot of that happen. We're continuing to gain momentum in the market. We're consistently seeing customers come at us with higher and higher expectations, putting very business critical applications and very critical businesses in our hands and trusting us with them. And we're seeing people start to develop applications that they couldn't even think of 2 or 3 years ago. And it's really exciting to be here.